In Naini Prison by Jawaharlal Nehru. I had gone back to jail after nearly 7 years, and memories of prison life had somewhat faded. I was in a Naini Central Prison, one of the big prisons of the province, and I was to have the novel experience of being kept by myself. My enclosure was, apart from the big enclosure containing the jail population of between 2200 and 2300. It was a small enclosure, circular in shape, with a diameter of about 100 feet and with a circular wall about 15 feet high surrounding it. In the middle of it was a drab and ugly building containing 4 cells. I was given 2 of these cells, connecting with each other, one to serve as a bathroom and a lavatory. The other remained unoccupied for some time. After the exciting and very active life I had been leading outside, I felt rather lonely and depressed. I was tired out, and for 2 or 3 days I slept a great deal. The hot weather had already begun, and I was permitted to sleep at night in the open, outside my cell in the narrow space between the inner building and the enclosing wall. My bed was heavily chained up, lest I might take it up and walk away, or more probably to avoid the bed being used as a kind of scaling ladder to climb the wall of the enclosure. The night were full of strange noises. The convict overseers, who guarded the main wall, frequently shouted to each other in varying keys, sometimes lengthening out their cries till they sounded like the moaning of a distant wind. The night watchmen in the barrack were continually counting away in a loud voice the prisoner under their charge and shouting out that all was well. And several times a night some jail official going his round visited our enclosure and shouted an enquiry to the warder on duty. As many enclosure was some distance away from the other, most of these voices reached me indistinctly, and I could not make out at first what they were. At times I felt as if I was on the verge of the forest, and the peasantry were shouting to keep the wild animal away from their fields. Sometimes it seemed the forest itself and the beasts of the night were keeping up their nocturnal chorus. Watch it my fancy. I wonder, or it is a fact that circular wall remind one more of captivity than a rectangular one? The absence of corner and angles add to the sense of oppression. In the daytime that wall even enrosed on the sky and only allowed a glimpse of a narrow bounded portion. With a wistful eye I looked upon that little tent of blue which prisoners call the sky, and that very drifting cloud that went with sail of silver by. At night that wall enclosed me all the more, and I felt as if I was at the bottom of a well, or else that part of the starlit sky that I saw ceased to be real and seemed part of an artificial planetarium. My barrack and enclosure were popularly known throughout the jail as the Kutta Ghar, the dog house. This was an old name which had nothing to do with me. The little barrack had been built originally apart from all others for specially dangerous criminals who had to be isolated. Latterly, it had been used for political prisoners, detainees, and the like who could thus be kept apart from the rest of the jail. In front of the enclosure, some distance away, was an erection that gave me a shock when I first had a glimpse of it from my barrack. It looked like a huge cage, and men went round and round inside it. I found out later that it was a water pump worked by human labor, as many as 16 persons being employed at a time. I got used to it as one gets used to everything, but it has always seemed to me one of the most foolish and barbarous ways of utilizing human labor power. And whenever I pass it, I think of the Jew. For some days, I was not permitted to go outside my enclosure for exercise or any other purpose. I was later allowed to go out for half an hour in the early morning, when it was almost dark, and to walk or run under the main wall. That early morning hour had been fixed for me so that I might not come in contact with or be seen by the other prisoners. I liked that outing, and it refreshed me tremendously. In order to compress as much open air exercise as I could in the short time at my disposal, I took to running and gradually increased this to over 2 miles daily. I used to get up very early in the morning, about 4 or even half past 3, when it was quite dark. Partly this was due to going to bed early, as the light provided was not good for much reading. I liked to watch the stars, and the position of some well known constellation would give me the approximate time. From where I lay, I could just see the pole star peeping over the wall, and as it was always there, I found it extraordinary comforting. Surrounding by a revolving sky, it seemed to be a symbol of cheerful constancy and perseverance. For a month I had no companion, but I was not alone, as I had the warden and the convict overseers and a convict cook and a cleaner in my enclosure. Occasionally, other prisoners come here on some business, most of them being convict overseers. CO serving out long sentence, lifers, convict sentenced for life were common. Usually, a life sentence was supposed to terminate after 20 years or even less. But there were many in prison then who had served more than 20 years already. I saw one very remarkable case in Naini Prison carry about attached to their clothes at the shoulder little wooden board giving information about their conviction and mentioning the date when release was due. On the board of the one prisoner, I read that this date of release was 1996. He had already in 1990 served out several years, and he was then a person of middle age. Probably he had been given several sentences and they had been added up one after the other. The total, I think, mounting to 75 years. For years and years, many of these lifers do not see a child or woman or even animals. They lost touch with the outside world completely and have no human contact left. They brood and wrap themselves in angry thought of fear and revenge and hatred. Forget the goods of the world, the kindness and joy, and live only wrapped up in the evil, till gradually even hatred loses its edge and life becomes a soulless thing, a machine like routine. Like automatons, they pass their days, each exactly like the other, and have free sensation, except one fear. From time to time, the prisoner bodies is weighed and measured. But how is one to weigh the mind and the spirit which wilt and stun themselves and wither away in his terrible atmosphere of oppression. People argue against the death penalty and their argument appeal to me greatly. But when I see the drawn out agony of a life spent in prison, I feel that it is perhaps better to have that penalty rather than to kill a person slowly and by degrees. One of the lifers came up to me once and asked me, "What of us lifers? Will Swaraj take us out of this hell?" Who are these lifers? Many of them came in gang cases, when large number, as many as 50 or 100, may be convicted and blocked. Some of these are probably guilty, but I doubt if most of those convicted are really guilty. It is easy to get people involved in such cases. And approver's evidence, a little identification, is all that is needed. Decades are increasing nowadays, and the prison population goes up year by year. If people starve, what are they to do? Judges and magistrates wax eloquent about the increase of crime, but are blind to the obvious economic causes of it. Then there are the agriculturists who have little village riot over some land dispute. Lathis fly about and somebody dies result. Many people in jail for a life or for a long term. Often all the men folk in a family will be imprisoned in this way, leaving the women to carry on as best they can. Not one of these is a criminal type. Generally, they are fine young men considered ably above the average villagers, both physically and mentally. A, a little training, some diversion of interest to other subjects and jobs, and these people would be valuable assets to the country.